Yeah, welcome everybody to today's Paula Kantor seminar series. We have today our lead economist Vijay Krishna from our Hyderabad office presenting on his work of his team on driving agricultural transformation through women's collectives in India. So I think this is a very interesting topic. And Vijay, please, I hand the floor over to you. Please take it away. You have about 30 minutes time. Thank you.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Vijay Krishna. I'm an agricultural economist by training. Thank you, Agnes. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Today, we will be talking about our small project on women's collectives in India, how and what are the potentials of these collectives to enable agricultural transformation in the rural areas of India. And I am glad that I'm presenting as part of the Paula Kantor seminar series. I assume that this would be the last talk of this year, although we had five or six very excellent talks in the past. Again, welcome to this particular session. And before starting with the topic, let me talk about feminization of agriculture and why we have to focus on self-help groups or women collectives. So one of these major aspects that when we are talking about why we have to work with the self-help groups is that why we have to work with women in general. And one of the arguments is that there is an increasing feminization of agriculture. And this was an argument, especially in the past. That means there are more and more women involved in agriculture. And so we have to reach out to them, and self-help groups is one of the media of reaching out to these women farmers. However, recent status of women in agriculture, agri-food systems by FAO has indicated that this may not be the case, or at least this is not the case globally. That means employment of women in agriculture sector, although it is still very significant, there's a slight decline especially since 2005. And other aspect is that although women are getting involved in agriculture, at what level or what agency they are working on agriculture, whether women are getting involved as mere unpaid or less paid laborers, or whether they are having increasing managerial capacity also. If they don't have this particular capacity, then what would be the implications of that one? So it's not very simple that women are more increasingly involved in agriculture. We are reaching out to them. It's very highly context specific, and we have to take case by case. So I would suggest that we have to reach out to the women farmers, whether or not feminization happens or not, because women remain indispensable to agricultural livelihoods. They are very active in several areas, especially in the global south. However, these women face disproportionate barriers to participate in agriculture. Often, that's the reason they are not very evident for the data collectors and policymakers, that there's multiple barriers for them to enter into agriculture production. And there is also barriers for accessing resources, market, information, etc., compared to their male counterparts. However, if we could ease out these barriers, there are evidences to say that their involvement could increase their economic empowerment. They will be more empowered, uh, which would lead to broader social, agriculture, and climate resilient goals that we are envisaging as part of sustainable development goals. And it can also lead to higher farm productivity. There are studies saying that empowered women are having higher uh, farm productivity. So, yeah, certainly there are pitfalls also. There are studies indicating that higher empowerment means less time for leisure, especially for women actively participating in agriculture. Another aspect is that we may not think that women's involvement in agriculture is rather static. Means, even if we observe one woman's life history over time, their empowerment levels, their economic status, their labor participation, etc., fluctuates a lot depending on their life events, whether they are married or not, whether they moved out of the in-laws house, whether the husband migrated for off-farm work to the city, whether there's a death of a family member, and whether they joined a women's saving group. So these events affect their life and their agency and empowerment. So it's highly fluctuating or dynamic, as you can imagine. And this work has been proposed by Lone Barste, our own gender expert in 2018. And it was drawn by Farnworth as part of a CIMMYT work, of Genovate work. So, self-help groups or women collectives are a small group of women uh, from different households, may or may not be related, and the size could be from 10 members to 20 members. And many times there are mechanisms to avoid relatives participating in a group, and they have a common goal. Many times it could be the rotating savings or credit, or to get microcredit and other resources, especially to get hold of land. Many times women in countries like India, they don't have access to cultivable land because most of the time the inheritance goes from father to son, and rarely women get that land titles. So to get that land and other resources, and to make sure that they have adequate market access, information access, women form self-help groups. And also, such participation leads to income and employment. Many times, women in rural areas could be underemployed, and so this could be a source of their employment and income, livelihood diversification, and all the participation would lead to leadership development, and they would be able to navigate through the complex so gender norms that is present in their society that prevents women from participating in number of activities. There are also evidence that these collectives would help women for a collective bargaining and civic participation, and empower them politically. Because of these reasons, these days the various governments and non-governmental organizations are focusing on women empowerment to reach out to the large number of women and make desirable changes quickly. And so, for example, in India, even the Prime Minister has repeatedly indicated the importance of women collectives and their economic as well as political implications. And again, if you are taking the history of women's SHG landscape, it is not a new phenomenon. Many of us may be knowing the rotating credit and savings clubs or the groups that are present in our villages long back among women to get microcredit, to get small loans, etc., from a group. And these were present in most of the countries, including China. It was present in the Western Africa. In Ghana, it was called Susu. In Nigeria, it was called Esusu. But in India also, we had similar chit funds present from long back. It was rooted in a traditional mutual aid practices across cultures. However, in the last half of 1970s and 1980s, um, many countries it got more institutionalized. For example, Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, for which they got the Nobel Prize, and so they actually um, help the women collectives to develop as well as sustain for microcredits. In 1980s, the National Agriculture and Rural Development Bank of India, which is called NABARD, they organized women's collectives for microcredit. So the more formalization happened during that time. When you are coming 1990s, they got these collectives started getting more attention from international development agencies, including IFAD, World Bank, UN, etc. And now it is modern, there are modern adaptations in the global south with respect to digitalization of agriculture, with respect to precision agriculture farming. And then we now realize that women empowerment in itself is a goal and not a byproduct. So these things actually happen over time. So coming to this today's talk, that this is based on a project that is going to end now. It's called Learning in Tandem. It is funded by CGR Gender Platform, and CIMMYT is leading that one with IMI and Australian National University. And the idea is that we study the women's collectives in India as well as Middle Eastern region, especially Middle East and North African region, MENA region, and see what works, what can be learned from India or from South Asia and applicable in Morocco and Egypt, etc. But however, in this today's presentation, the presentation comprises of three cases from India. And we actually deals with what happens, who participates in these SHGs, what are the effects for empowerment, agriculture, etc. The analysis is mainly quantitative, but also we use focus group discussion and qualitative data, especially from India. We have already seen the first slides that women's involvement in agriculture has been declining in many parts of India. But if you are taking the national statistics from India, the ratio of percentage of women to percentage of men involved in agriculture is increasing. That means clearly Indian agriculture is feminizing. However, there are criticisms to see this mere involvement as feminization, as many times, although men migrate to the nearby cities, they are the one who are taking decisions regarding agricultural practices, when to put fertilizer, to whom we have to sell it, etc., etc. And again, this feminization is caused mainly by the outmigration of men, and they leave women behind because of social reasons and to take care of their aging family members as well as children in the village. And we found that around 75% of the rural women are involved in Indian agriculture one way or other. That is a huge number, billion, or almost a billion or more women are, population is dependent on this particular agriculture. Then in India, there's high policy focus on women's self-help groups. A lot of benefit schemes are diverted through women's self-help groups, that making it more and more relevant. So we are taking three case studies, three different ones, one from Orissa, from Eastern India, other from Bihar, again in the Eastern India, and from South Kerala. Each self-help group's unit managed by the government is named differently. In Orissa, it is called Mission Shakti, Bihar, it is called Jivika, and Kerala, it is called Kudumbasri. So doesn't matter how it is being called, they all means that empowerment of women in one way or other. The first study is from Orissa, is from Mayurbhanj area. This is done by, the project is by CIMMYT itself, CIMMYT by CISA phase 4 and phase 3, if I remember correctly. And it is in this particular tribal belt of Orissa. CIMMYT researchers were intervening among women farmers through self-help groups for popularizing maize. This area is typically a rice growing area, largely rain-fed, and it is rice fallow system is most prevalent. And many times rice is not transplanted, but it's upland rice, which is low productive and which leaves farmers in poverty. So the idea of the CISA intervention was to intensification of rice fallows with a new crop, maize. It was implemented through self-help groups in this particular district. So here we are actually not trying to study the impact of SHG, but how SHGs or collectives can help in implementing project like that, and what would be the impact. And we have used 3 years data to analyze the adoption pattern and impacts. First step, we assess the impact of demonstration trials, the involvement. The project mainly involved in this particular area through demonstration trials in farmers' plot. And we first of all, we found that whether these trials and the involvement of project is having a positive impact on innovation adoption. And we found that yes, there's a significant impact, and the impact is high if the number of plots are more in the neighborhood than a distance of 5 kilometers. That means if there are more plots in the particular village, there's a higher chance that the farmers will adopt this particular innovation compared to a plot in other village. That's quite natural, but we have to test it. We have to test it to find out whether the project has an impact. Second, we found that whether this adoption or the participation of farmers in this activity has led to any change in the empowerment. Women empowerment is measured as a score using via methodology developed by IFPRI. And we can make a between score of 0 to 1 depending on the level of empowerment. And if the empowerment score is above 0.80, we call them empowered. And so we can also create an empowerment dummy. That means they are highly empowered. In both these aspects, we found that however we measure empowerment, our intervention is having a significant effect, positive effect on women empowerment. Then we have this first step, we went for association. That means we did the ordinary least squares test or probit test without controlling for selection bias. But then when we control for selection bias and using the instrumental variable, we found that the impact is even more pronounced. That means the women working through women's collectives in Orissa has led to a positive change in their life. They become more empowered, at least in the short run. Again, we must remember that the project did not intend to empower women. Their objective was to increase the maize area, but they decided to go through women's collectives. And we found that that particular action is having a significant effect on women empowerment, which is actually spillover, how do you call, unintended positive effect. So that's one. Here we can see that working through women's self-help groups not only increases the efficiency of the project, but also creates positive gender effect in the society. It is one of the few cases where CGR intervention targeting women farmers has documented a very positive effect. And however, we found that if the women farmers are involved for longer period of time through self-help groups, of course, the impact would be significantly high compared to short-term interaction. We also found that there's a significant effect on food security of the household, etc., which is also a positive change. Now, coming to the second case study, Bihar. Bihar is also a state of Eastern India with a high level of poverty. It's one of the most poor states of India, like Orissa. And here the Bihar Rural Livelihood Project, which was initiated in 2007, is doing a women's self-help group program called Jivika. It was started in collaboration with the World Bank and Government of India. It covers all the 38 districts of Bihar. with 1.05 million self-help groups active now. Around 12.5 million women are participating in these activities. So, unlike in case of Orissa, the previous one, here we tried to find the direct impact of women collective participation or SHG participation. We have conducted a survey in 10 districts of Bihar. We covered around 1,200 households, mostly cultivating rice, wheat, and maize. But also that we covered both husband and wife from these districts, so that we covered 2,400 individuals. And that data has been very rich, and we collected information regarding their decision-making, workload, etc. We found that when the random sample, around 25% of the households had participation in the SHGs. That means the participation rate is significantly high. And so the government claims about high participation could be right. So we tried to examine the determinants and impact of SHG participation here. We found that most of the households were participating in SHGs mainly for livestock-related training, microcredit, etc. And some got crop production-related training, poultry production, mushroom cultivation. But really, joint crop production was taken up by less than 20% of the households. And if you are seeing here also, the program is being designed in such a way that the most marginalized caste is a hierarchical social structure very prevalent in India. And the most marginalized sections of society, we call scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, they are more active in these collective programs compared to the non-marginalized castes. So if we have done multiple regression analysis, I am not providing the results, but I can indicate the major results are here. Women from marginalized caste groups show a higher likelihood of SHG participation as compared to non-marginalized group. The poorer households, if the household is poor, then there's an increase in the livelihood of joining the self-help groups. Both young women and very old women are not participating, but middle-aged women are more likely to join. And there is immense intersectionalities with respect to age and caste, education and caste, wealth and caste, etc. For example, the education's impact on participation is much higher among the marginalized caste compared to non-marginalized caste. If marginalized caste women are more educated, there's a higher chance compared to equally educated non-marginalized caste women to participate in self-help groups. There are a lot of social structures preventing women from participating. That's in a different aspect. But here, the social marginalization is being eased to a great extent by the participation. Then we did the matching analysis and found that there's a significant positive association of women's participation in self-help groups on their empowerment. We found that we also tried to check whether it has any impact on men's empowerment, but we found that the effect is rather low. But women are getting more and more empowered. And the intra-household inequality score has been reduced within the household. The agency difference is reduced because of participation in self-help groups. So in general, this here also we found that there's a positive and significant effect of participation in women's collectives on empowerment. So there are few major insights. One is that the targeting through caste lines is actually working. The marginalized caste people are more and more likely to participate in the self-help group programs. However, we found that the group works properly if the members are from the same caste group at least. If there is a very heterogeneous groups, they function less efficient as compared to very homogeneous group. And as I indicated, there is a significant intersectionality. Now we are coming to the third case study from Kerala. It's a complicated name called Kudumbasri. That means what do you call, the prosperity of the household or something like that. It was launched in 1998 as part of to eradicate poverty in the state. To give a background, Kerala is one of the most prosperous states in India, and the Human Development Index of Kerala is on par with many developed countries. So, and poverty is also very less compared to Bihar or Orissa. And compared to other areas, here there is a very clear structure of these self-help groups. There are neighborhood groups, area development societies, and community development societies, in such a way that these women's collectives are well organized and linked to the ministry. There are three major objectives. One is poverty alleviation, second is women empowerment, and third is sustainable development. Often this third goal meet with sustainable agriculture development, food production, etc. If you are taking the case of agriculture, the major activities taken up are collective farming, microfinance, credit access, and micro enterprises, which include mainly processing, mushroom cultivation, processing, etc. However, not a lot of collectives are involved in agriculture. Very few people are, very small share of SHGs are involved in agriculture collective farming directly. Okay, sorry. So this study was taken up this year as part of, we combined this with an internship program from Kerala Agricultural University so that we could teach the students on how to do the basic socioeconomic research. And we selected only the self-help groups involved directly with food production or processing. So we trained the students for a couple of weeks in CIMMYT and provided them opportunities to do mock interviews and asked them to do focus group discussions in 2 states of India. They have done exceptionally good work, and we got a wealth of information, and the qualitative data was collected and analyzed using in vivo software, which was part of their internship program. So we asked in this FGDs, we asked them what are their perceived impacts, and there was no surprise that most of the participants felt that there's an increased access to financial resources, financial services was the major impact. Then diversification of income sources, employment. They also faced increased decision-making power within the households and communities, ability to speak up, take up the leadership goals, and those collectives who are working on the agriculture, they indicated that they could adopt climate resilient technologies like drip irrigation, crop rotation, and some are also involved in drones, etc. Then we also asked them what are the most perceived constraints for working this particular agriculture mainly. And many times government help these collectives directly and indirectly, allowing them to get raw material for processing, for example. However, they also put certain conditions and restrictions that they can market only through these particular outlets, or they cannot go to the main the open market, etc., etc. So the participants often perceived that it's a challenge. The government's regulations are actually helping them, but also limiting their market access. And Kerala is a tropical area with a lot of rainfall. So storage and production activities are limited there. And then they are also feel that there is a restricted access to advanced tools like precision agriculture technologies. However, one of the most important things that we have observed in these FGDs is that one feeling that self-help groups leads to too much empowerment for women for their own good. This is a clash between traditional society as well as the modern society, and many times women taking decisions independently are being looked down, even in one of the most educated societies of India. That means if the income generated by women through collectives are used by women without consulting with their husbands is considered as a bad thing, and these SHGs are creating a society that is too independent women, which is not good for society. We can have another discussion regarding that, and we used vignettes and found that this indeed is the very prevalent notion in society. So across the region, 3 different regions in India, there are certain common patterns. One is that marginalized women are increasingly involved. It could be the marginalization through caste lines. It could be the marginalization through wealth. It could be the marginalization through education, lack of education, etc. So major activities still remain is the microcredit provision. Many times, many areas followed by livestock cultivation production, but agriculture, collective farming is not taken up that widely, which is something that restricts our R&D's involvement with women farmers through collectives. And however, there is a recent emergence of income generating activities, including seed production, processing, mushroom cultivation, etc., etc. So that's actually growing. And other aspect is that agriculture and food processing units are increasingly getting prominence in many areas, including the economically marginalized areas of Orissa and Bihar. And government support has its own strength and weaknesses. Many times there are bureaucratic delays happening, and that delays their agricultural activities, which is heavily dependent on monsoons as well as drought and the availability of water, etc. Also, when government tries to help, it also these bureaucratic delays also slows down the process, and that is actually a big constraint as compared to an NGO-based self-help groups. So again, when we are thinking of working with the through self-help groups, there are certain aspects that we have to be cautious. First of all, what is our objective? Whether we are trying to empower the women or we are using them for promoting our technologies. Again, when we are working through self-help groups, how to approach them? Whether we have to first give the women farmers resource access, whether we have to invest in skill development or market access, etc., or everything should be done together, and how we can do this together. In Orissa, we found the interesting aspect was that maize cultivation was very popular, but linking the farmers to market was not done properly, which has led to disadoption of maize from that particular area later on. That's once the project is gone, the farmers went back to rice, upland rice farming because the market was not well developed. And we also have to address the social concerns, like what is too much empowerment. We also have to work with the social norms. And the other aspect regarding slow government response and lack of continuous supports are we have already discussed. And if CIMMYT is trying to work with self-help groups, we may have to develop a strategy clearly indicating the theory of change. So now we are actually working on household survey data sets from Kerala and Morocco and comparing and contrasting what the experience, what are the cross-regional learnings, etc. How the policy and institutional involvement could benefit at different levels. And we also have to focus on the perceived changes in the women empowerment and involvement in agriculture than defining empowerment from our own perspective. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the wonderful team of LIT project, Learning in Tandem. We have Maha from CIMMYT, Kundala Lahiri from Australian National University, Yusuf from CIMMYT. We have wonderful consultants as well as students working with us. So also we captured 13 students from Kerala, 12 students from Kerala Agriculture University. And there was significant capacity development involved. So some of them are still working with us and they are still working with this particular project. So this was part of their undergraduate training program, which happened for 2 months with the help of this particular team. Finally, I would like to thank the participant. Thank you, Agnes. Thanks, wonderful gender team of CIMMYT that we are having now for facilitating these projects like such as this one. I would like to also thank the CGR gender platform for funding this particular project. And thank you everybody for the patient listening. If you have any question after, I think now, Agnes, you would like to come in?
Sure. Hold on. Thank you, Vijesh. It's a fascinating presentation, and I can understand why you struggle to present so much material in 30 minutes because you're really presenting 3 different studies. And so, I think I'm going to make maybe 3 or 4 points. One is that if you're presenting making this presentation again as a portfolio presentation, I don't think you need to put that much emphasis on your introductory material because a lot of people in the gender world already know this. And I think that the question of, the feminization of agriculture has it's almost like it isn't as hot a topic as it used to be before because of the secular because of the secular decrease in the proportion of women who are in agriculture because of structural transformation. I think it's an empirical regularity in the process of in economic development that people are going to leave agriculture for the manufacturing and services sectors. That said, even if the trend of feminization is not happening, agriculture is still important. So it's a trend versus the level. The level of women, the number of women employed in agriculture and agri-food systems is still high. So if you're going to make this presentation again, I would actually jump directly into looking at how important women's groups are in various things, as as promoting empowerment as a platform for service delivery, etc. My second point is that this is a synthesis presentation across 3 studies that have very different methodologies. So it's sort of hard to assess what the the rigor or the methods of the individual studies because you're trying to present obviously an overview. But if you're going to try to publish the overview paper, I would seriously encourage you to be very clear about the methods that are being used in each of the individual papers. So for example, it wasn't clear to me whether the first study was a study which tried to establish causality or whether it was an observational study, because I don't see you using, actually, I don't see you talking about a counterfactual at all, which is fine. I mean, not all studies are causal studies, but if that's the case, just be very careful about using the word impact if what you're actually measuring is an association. The case study, and for me, that is a comment I make on the first paper. And also the second paper, because I don't know how the sample was drawn out. I know that Jivika has had impact evaluations using RCTs, which found very similar results. And I think the third case study is qualitative, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that is completely fine. I think qualitative studies are actually able to uncover a lot of the nuance that purely quantitative studies are unable to do. So, I guess my third point has to do with your question about needing to develop a strategy to work with SHGs. And I think in this case, I'm going to link to the other point you made, which was empowering versus utilizing. And I think that to develop a strategy to work with SHGs, you have to understand how the SHGs themselves frame their theory of change. So my colleagues at IFPRI and I have been working with Pradhan since, I guess, 2015 or possibly earlier. And one of the things that they sort of emphasized to us was that in their first phase was really about, you know, social mobilization. They didn't even go into, credit groups, which is one of their primary activities, until they had built sort of this social consciousness among women. So, um, I guess my advice on how to develop this strategy is to see what the SHGs themselves are doing, so that you see yourselves really as their partners and not necessarily the ones leading what they're doing, because they have their own agency. So in that regard, it might be useful for you also to link up with your IFPRI colleagues. Kalyarin Raghunathan in the Delhi office has been involved in the GVICA evaluation, and also with Wings, which is working with Pradhan, and also Neha Kumar, who is based in DC. I'll send you a whole batch of papers we've written in our almost 10-year collaboration with Pradhan. And we do find that SHG participation is very positively associated with women's empowerment, but there are areas which are more slow to move. So for example, we found, for example, that attitudes towards IPV towards women were barely affected by joining an SHG. There were other parts of the among the empowerment indicators which were more quickly to be affected. And I think it emphasizes that gender norms are actually really slow to change. But it was a fascinating presentation, and I look forward to seeing the study when it's finalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Very interesting points as usual. There is no doubt about that. And okay, I agree that the introduction was a bit too long. And talking again about the feminization, I agree with you that I could actually jump directly to the women's self-help groups and all those things. I will take care of that next time. Coming to the second methods, was thinking that the audience would be not agricultural economics, so going to the nitty-gritties of causality estimation would be a bit boring for them or so. But here we have used the instrumental variable approach. We use the distance to the demonstration trials from the household as the instrumental variable to predict adoption. Again, our aim was not to find out the impact of self-help groups, but impact of an intervention that used self-help groups. And second one, how this sample was drawn. It was also done as part of another project, CRA, Climate Resilient Agriculture. We were doing the in-time evaluation. So we went to villages randomly and where in districts where this particular project was active, and then we did that village census, and from the village census we collected 20 villages per district or something. So yeah, again, one of the most challenging part for me was the qualitative study, because I had never done qualitative study in the past, and so it was very difficult when I'm trying to present the findings. Then how more meaningfully, it's always tables are easy to interpret and analyze, but when the qualitative, I am having less experience. But I agree with you that I have read the papers by Kalyani Raghunathan as well as Neha Kumar. They are excellent ones with you. And I will be honest, I am planning to make, when I'm developing the cumulative report for the paper out of combining from different aspects, including Morocco. We have done similar work was done in Morocco. It's completely different, but we also observed certain patterns emerging, common patterns emerging from that one. So again, the interesting or the challenging aspect is that I have to tell a story that has not been told earlier. That's okay. Again, there is no point of saying the same story that was told 10 years back.
It's fine to tell the same story because then you reinforce findings. I think as researchers, we are too obsessed with saying something new, whereas I think it's very important to build the body of evidence. So don't worry if you're saying the same thing. You say what your study finds.
Yeah. Thank you, but thank you very much for the comments. I have taken up the notes, and yeah, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, please come up. And you're right. I'll approach Maureen with the qualitative questions, certainly. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I think I was too clear.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Vijesh, for a great presentation, and Agnes for your analysis. I don't have a specific question, but Vijesh, I have shared with you separately, and maybe I can also paste it here for others. A review that we did of collectives for gender transformative ag and food systems, and some of the recommendations, sort of tie in with what you have, said. But we found that it was also important to do our own, reflections, to interrogate our biases. And then using the gender and power analysis to understand, the local context that we're working in. And I'm glad that you're looking at doing this study in other countries, and also involving collectives in monitoring and evaluation. We designed tools, to ensure that they can determine the indicators that we are using for measuring their own empowerment and uptake of the technologies that we were working, with them. So I'll share that. It has quite great recommendations that you might want to combine, especially for the qualitative elements as you seek to do the study in Morocco and other places.
Thank you very much, Maureen. I'll reach out to you with my suggestions and yeah, my requests and suggestions. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing the paper, Agnes. Yeah, and Pascal, you have a comment, suggestion?
Thanks, Vijesh. Not a question. Thank you very much for pioneering this line of work, Vijesh. I very much appreciate it. And I was beginning to enjoy the comment by Agnes when she was talking about feminization of agriculture. I was going to ask, is that defeminization if structural transformation is taking female labor, also like male labor, away from agriculture to non-ag? Is that being positive for women's labor incomes, decision making? I know there was quite a bit of discussion during the last AgriCon meeting in Delhi about this, and I remember I think it was Sharon, who said just because somebody's making a decision doesn't mean they are okay. So what does that imply for decision making or in non-ag labor markets? Are those better markets than agricultural markets? Is that a positive thing? And how does that relate to decisions over their labor, over their participation in labor markets? Sorry, I'm
I think
coming in late. Maybe you covered that earlier, but I came in late.
no, no, I did not. But I don't want to take away from Vijesh's seminar, but I think it really much depends on the market that women are entering, and it's so different. It's very context specific. So I actually remember, so I was also at ICA in Delhi, and
Yeah.
and at the not at that particular session, but on the session on agricultural mechanization in India, one of the issues was that women were being forced, mechanization was displacing women, but they didn't have any alternatives in the non-farm sector because of barriers to labor markets. So I think that, this issue of structural transformation and whether movement away from agriculture is empowering or not really has to be assessed on a case-to-case basis. But I want to bring it back to Vijesh because this is his time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know whether you remember the talk by Maxwell. And Pascal, you were the chair of that particular session. We have presented the work of Maxwell, where the we decide adoption was taking women completely out of labor market, and then that had a significant negative impact on them. And so, yeah, I agree with that. And also there is another study by Idrisri Patnaik where she actually asked women directly what it means to them to get involved more and more in decision making in agriculture. And it's not always positive. People were not very happy that they have to take these new decisions. And so at least in that short term, there could be displeasures and yeah. So, but you covered all those things and that's very clearly. Yeah.
No, it's a very interesting area, which that's why I was saying I was enjoying that sort of dialogue that Agnes was bringing up, because rural labor studies are rather rare. So, I mean, this offers a chance to become more granular about that, but also, just it allows a deeper understanding of the emerging rural labor markets, ag labor markets in rural areas, and non-ag labor markets in rural areas, and what they imply for female and male labor supply choices. I mean, labor participation choices. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
As I said, Vijesh, I'm just asking questions. I don't have any answers. Sorry.
We'll try to find it together. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, shall we call it a day?
Oh, so this is the last Paula Kantor seminar for this year. So thank you everyone for your participation in this seminar and Happy New Year. We'll see you, I guess.